The city was painted in golden dusk, but beneath its glow, hunger hid in the shadows. Outside the glass walls of Lviv, the most expensive restaurant in town, a little girl stood barefoot on the cold pavement, her thin hands pressed against the window pane. Inside, chandeliers shimmered like captured stars. Laughter filled the air, and silver spoons clinked against crystal plates. But to her, it was another world, one that smelled of food she'd never tasted, and dreams she could barely remember. Her name was Lena, barely 10, her dress torn and faded, her eyes too old for her age. Every evening she would stand there silently, hoping someone would spare her a crust of bread. People came and went, businessmen, couples, tourists, all pretending not to see her. To them she was invisible, just another shadow at the edge of luxury. Inside the restaurant, Adrian Voss, a self-made millionaire, sat alone at the corner table. Tall, confident, dressed in a charcoal suit, he was the kind of man whose presence commanded a room without trying. He had built his empire from nothing, tech, investments, real estate, and now he could buy anything, except peace. As he scrolled through his phone, ignoring the steaming meal before him, his eyes drifted toward the glass wall. For a moment his gaze met hers, the little girl staring at his untouched plate of steak and mashed potatoes. Their worlds collided in silence. He frowned, irritated at first. Another street beggar, he muttered, waving for the waiter. But something made him pause. The way her eyes shimmered, not with greed, but desperation mixed with dignity. She wasn't begging. She was pleading silently for permission to survive. When the waiter approached, Adrian sighed. "Pack the leftovers," he said, brushing off his tie. He didn't know why he said it. He usually never did. Charity wasn't his thing, but when he stood to leave and stepped outside, he found her still there, waiting, as if time itself had stopped for her. The chilly wind brushed against them as their eyes met again. She hesitated, voice trembling like a whisper afraid to exist. May I have your leftovers, sir?" Her words sliced through the noise of the city like a fragile cry. People nearby turned to look, some sneering, others pitying, but no one stepped forward. Adrian blinked, speechless. He looked down at the paper bag in his hand, the meal he didn't need, and for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. He handed her the bag without a word. She took it with both hands, clutching it as though it was a treasure. But before she could run off, he noticed the trembling of her fingers, the way her lips quivered from cold more than hunger. "Where are your parents?" he asked softly. She looked up with those ocean-wide eyes. "Gone, sir. Both." Adrian froze. The words hit harder than he expected. In that instant, the world around him faded, the cars, the noise, the restaurant glow. All that remained was her frail figure and those haunting eyes. Then, just as he was about to ask more, a shout echoed from the alley nearby. "Lena, get back here!" A rough voice, harsh and threatening. A man stumbled into view, dirty, drunk, his grip tightening on a stick. The girl flinched, Adrian's brows furrowed. "Who is that?" She stepped back, clutching the bag tighter. "My uncle," she whispered, fear flooding her small frame. The man's eyes locked on Adrian, rage and greed burning behind them. "She's my niece," he growled. "You feeding her? She owes me for the roof she sleeps under." Adrian's instinct told him something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Before he could respond, the man grabbed Lena by the wrist, making her cry out in pain. The millionaire's jaw tightened. In that split second, the part of him that only dealt in numbers and logic disappeared, and something human, raw and protective took over. "Let her go," Adrian said, his voice low, dangerous, but the man only laughed. "She's mine to feed, or starve. Stay out of it, rich man." And as the little girl whimpered, the city lights flickering over their shadows, Adrian stepped forward, a choice forming in his heart that would change both their lives forever. The drunk man's grip on Lena's wrist tightened, and she winced in pain. Her fragile body trembled under his harsh fingers. Adrian's jaw clenched, his sharp features hardening into something cold and unyielding. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, but the sight before him, This trembling little girl being treated like a rag ignited a fire he hadn't felt in years. Let her go, Adrian repeated. His voice low, controlled, but deadly. The man sneered, breath thick with alcohol. You think money makes you her savior? She's mine. She eats what I give her, sleeps where I tell her. You don't interfere. Before Adrian could move, the man yanked Lena closer, and she cried out softly, Please, uncle. I'll be good, I promise. Her voice cracked like glass. Something inside Adrian snapped. He took one powerful stride forward, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted it sharply. The drunk stumbled, hissing in pain, releasing Lena instantly. Touch her again, Adrian warned, his voice like thunder held back by willpower. And you'll regret it. The man stumbled backward, muttering curses. The crowd that had gathered began whispering, phones raised, recording the confrontation. The man, now afraid of the attention, spat near Adrian's feet and staggered away into the shadows. The street went quiet again. Lena stood still, clutching her food bag like it was a shield. Her breathing came in short, scared gasps. Adrian knelt slowly so his eyes met hers. You're safe now, he said softly. He won't hurt you again. She didn't speak. Her lips trembled, but her eyes glistened with tears. Silent gratitude, fear, disbelief, all tangled together. Adrian sighed and took off his coat, draping it gently over her shoulders. It almost swallowed her whole. Come on, he said quietly. Let's get you something warm to drink. Inside Le Vivre, the restaurant manager looked uneasy as Adrian walked back in, holding the girl's hand. People stared, whispering. The same waiters who had ignored her moments ago now hurried to clear a table. Adrian sat her down, ordered hot chocolate and soup. She hesitated, glancing around as though afraid someone would throw her out. It's okay, he reassured her. Eat. The first spoonful of soup touched her lips and her body seemed to exhale relief. Her hands trembled from both hunger and warmth. Adrian watched quietly. Every sip she took made him feel something strange, something he couldn't explain. She looked up shyly between bites. Thank you, sir, she whispered. He nodded. What's your name? Lena, she said softly, almost like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to exist in his world. He smiled faintly. Lena, that's a beautiful name. Her eyes brightened slightly. My mama, she said it means tender palm tree, something that bends but doesn't break. Adrian's heart twisted at the way she said mama, like it was both a memory and a prayer. What happened to your parents? He asked carefully. She stared into her bowl, voice small. Mama got sick. We didn't have money for the doctor. Papa went to find work but never came back. Her fingers tightened around the spoon. Uncle took me in. Said I had to earn my keep. Sometimes I sell flowers. Sometimes I just wait outside here. Adrian's chest felt heavy. He'd grown up poor himself once. Back then no one had stopped to help. He'd learned to fight, to build, to never need anyone again. But seeing this little girl sitting across from him, hungry, trembling, yet still polite, unlocked a door he thought he'd sealed forever. When she finished her soup, she smiled weakly. That was the best food ever, Adrian smiled back. There's more where that came from. You don't have to wait by windows anymore. But before she could answer, a police officer entered the restaurant, looking around. His gaze fell on them, and he approached. Sir, he said, addressing Adrian, we've received complaints about an altercation outside. A man claims you assaulted him. Adrian frowned. He was hurting this child. The officer's tone hardened slightly. Do you have proof of that? Lena froze, clutching his sleeve. Fear flickered in her eyes again. Adrian stood tall, jaw tightening, his instinct to protect her reigniting. I have witnesses, he said. And if that man shows his face again, he'll have more to worry about than police reports. The officer hesitated, then nodded slowly. We'll investigate. He looked at Lena. Are you all right, miss? She nodded, voice barely audible. He saved me, the officer softened. You're lucky, little one. As he left, Adrian sat back down, his mind racing. He'd just crossed a line, one that could complicate his pristine image. But strangely, he didn't care. For the first time in a long time, he'd acted not for profit or pride, but for something real. He looked at Lena again. She smiled shyly, eyes full of gratitude that words could never hold. Sir, she whispered. Why did you help me? He looked out the window, where the city lights blurred into gold and silver streaks. Because someone should have helped me once, but didn't. And as he spoke, Something shifted quietly between them, something fragile yet unbreakable. Neither of them knew it yet, but this small act of kindness was only the beginning of a miracle neither could have imagined. The next morning, sunlight spilled through Adrian's penthouse windows, painting gold streaks across marble floors and glass walls. The city below was alive again, horns blaring, people rushing, deals being made. But Adrian's thoughts were elsewhere. He hadn't slept well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. That small, fragile figure with trembling hands and eyes too deep for her age. Lena. He didn't know why she haunted his mind. He'd met thousands of people in his life. Investors, politicians, even celebrities. But no one had looked at him the way she did. Not with admiration, not with greed, but with innocent faith. Like he was someone good. That feeling unsettled him because he'd spent years convincing himself he wasn't. Downstairs, in the living room, the housekeeper glanced up nervously as Adrian entered. "Sir, the little girl is awake," she said softly. He nodded, buttoning his cuffs. "Did she eat?" "Yes." She was very polite. She even tried to wash her own dishes. The woman smiled faintly. "Reminded me of my daughter." Adrian nodded again, his chest tightening unexpectedly. "I'll talk to her." He walked toward the guest room, a warm, sunlit space he hadn't used in years. Lena sat by the window, legs folded on the couch, gazing out at the skyline. The oversized sweater she wore nearly swallowed her, but it made her look safe somehow. When she turned and saw him, her face lit up with a shy smile. "Good morning, sir." "Morning," he replied. "How are you feeling?" "Warm," she said, hugging the sweater's sleeves. "It's the first time I slept in a real bed." Adrian's throat tightened. He cleared it and said, "You don't have to call me sir. Adrian is fine." She shook her head quickly. "You're too big for just Adrian." He chuckled softly. "Big? You saved me," she said, tilting her head. "You're like someone from the stories Mama used to tell." The words caught him off guard. It had been years since anyone called him something good, something pure. "Stories?" he asked. She nodded. "Mama said good people don't wear crowns or have castles. They just help when no one else will." Silence fell between them, gentle but heavy. Adrian turned away, hiding the emotion flickering in his eyes. "What about your uncle?" he asked finally. Her smile faded. "He'll be angry. He always is." Adrian's hands clenched. "You can't go back to him." "But I don't have anywhere else." He exhaled slowly. "You do now." For a moment her expression softened, hope flickering like a candle, but then her eyes dropped. "People don't just keep kids like me." "I know." Her quiet realism stabbed deeper than any insult ever could. Adrian looked at her, seeing not just a child but a reflection of his own past. A boy who once slept under bridges and was told he'd never matter. He wanted to promise her the world, but promises were fragile things. "Let's take one step at a time," he said finally. "We'll figure it out together." She nodded, unsure but trusting. Later that day, Adrian took her to his office, a towering glass building overlooking the heart of the city. As they walked through the marble lobby, heads turned. Secretaries whispered, guards stared. Who was this ragged little girl holding the CEO's hand? Inside the boardroom, Adrian met with his assistant, Melissa, who raised an eyebrow. "Sir, may I ask?" "She's a guest," Adrian interrupted firmly, "and she's to be treated with respect." Melissa nodded quickly, though her eyes still flickered with curiosity. While Adrian handled a few calls, Lena wandered around the office, marveling at everything. The plants, the shiny desk, even the elevator buttons. She had never seen anything so big, so clean. When he finished, she approached him timidly. "What do you do here, sir?" "I build things," he said. "Companies, ideas, futures." She tilted her head. "But why don't you build smiles?" He blinked. "Smiles? You make all these tall buildings, but no one in them looks happy." The words hit him like a quiet revelation. Out of the mouths of children, truth often came sharper than wisdom. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. You're smarter than most people in this building. I just look, she said innocently. People forget to look. That night, as Adrian drove her back to his penthouse, the city lights flickered across her face. She pressed her forehead to the car window, watching the world rush by. It's all so beautiful, she murmured, but it must be lonely up here. He didn't answer, because she was right, and she didn't even know how right she was. Just as they turned into his street, Adrian's phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Unknown number. You have something that belongs to me. Bring her back tonight or I'll come for her. Adrian's heart stopped. His eyes hardened as he stared at the message. He didn't need to guess who it was. Lena looked up from the back seat, confusion in her eyes. Sir? What's wrong? He forced a calm smile. Nothing, sweetheart. Nothing at all. But deep down, he knew the price of compassion was about to begin. The car rolled to a stop in front of Adrian's penthouse, its headlights slicing through the misty evening air. He sat behind the wheel for a moment, unmoving, the phone still glowing faintly in his hand. The message stared back at him like a silent threat. Bring her back tonight, or I'll come for her. He looked through the rearview mirror at Lena, who had fallen asleep, her small face illuminated by the city lights. Her head rested gently against the window, one hand clutching his coat. Peaceful, innocent, unaware, Adrian exhaled slowly and slipped the phone into his pocket. He had faced threats before, from rivals, from competitors, even from the press, but none had ever felt like this. This wasn't about money or reputation. This was personal. He lifted Lena gently, careful not to wake her, and carried her inside. She stirred only once, murmuring softly, Don't let him find me. Before sinking back into sleep, I won't, Adrian whispered. His voice low and certain. He tucked her into bed, brushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead, and lingered for a moment longer than he intended. Something about her presence filled the silent apartment with a strange warmth, one he hadn't felt since his own mother's voice had faded from his memory years ago. But downstairs, the world was far from calm. By the time he poured himself a drink, his phone buzzed again. Another message. Unknown. Number. You think you're a hero. She's not worth it. She's trouble, and you'll see soon enough. Adrian's grip tightened around the glass until it cracked slightly. He opened his laptop and began tracing the number, an old habit from his early days in tech security. Within minutes, he had an address, an abandoned motel on the outskirts of the city. He debated for a moment. Logic told him to call the police, but logic had never saved anyone's soul. He closed the laptop, grabbed his coat, and slipped quietly out the door. The drive to the outskirts took less than 30 minutes, but every turn of the wheel deepened his anger. How many times had he seen people like Lena slip through the cracks? How many men like her uncle had hidden behind poverty to justify cruelty? When he arrived, the motel looked exactly as he expected, half collapsed, its neon sign flickering faintly, the air thick with the smell of rust and stale beer. He parked his car under a dead tree and stepped out, the gravel crunching beneath his shoes. Come out, he called into the darkness, voice steady. You wanted to talk? Let's talk. A shadow moved near one of the broken doors. Then another. Adrian's muscles tensed. Two men emerged. One of them, Lena's uncle, now sober but still reeking of spite. Well, look who's here, the man sneered. The rich man with a savior complex. Adrian's jaw tightened. You hurt her again, and I'll end you. You understand? The man laughed. You think you can protect her forever? She's just another stray. She'll end up back on the streets. Kids like her don't stay lucky for long. Adrian stepped closer, his voice a low growl. You had your chance to care for her. You threw it away. The uncle spat on the ground. She's mine by blood. Blood doesn't make you family, Adrian said, his tone cutting through the cold night. Love does. Responsibility does. You have neither. Before the man could reply, a police siren wailed in the distance, faint but growing louder. Adrian didn't flinch. He had called them anonymously before leaving his building. Within minutes, flashing lights painted the broken walls in red and blue. Officers stepped out, surrounding the area. The uncle tried to flee, but Adrian blocked his path. She's not going anywhere with you again. The police quickly restrained the man, reading his rights as he shouted curses into the night. One officer turned to Adrian. "You did the right thing, sir. We've been looking for him." Multiple reports of child neglect and abuse. Adrian nodded quietly, watching the man disappear into the back of a squad car. But even as justice was served, he couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. The man's last words echoed like a curse in his mind. "She'll end up back on the streets. Kids like her don't stay lucky for long." He drove home under a restless sky, the city lights flickering like distant promises. When he entered the apartment, Lena was awake, sitting up in bed. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "You went out," she said softly. "I got scared." He knelt beside her bed. "You're safe now, Lena. He won't hurt you again." Tears welled up in her eyes. "You mean he's gone?" He nodded. She threw her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. "Thank you, sir. Thank you." He held her gently, the weight of her tiny frame melting into his chest. In that moment, something shifted deep inside him. Not a fleeting emotion, but a decision. He would protect her, no matter what. But as he looked out through the window, he saw something glinting in the distance. The reflection of a camera lens. Someone was watching from across the street. A paparazzo, perhaps. Or someone worse. The next morning, the headlines would explode. Millionaire CEO found sheltering homeless girl. Scandal or secret. And with that, Adrian's act of kindness would turn into a storm he never saw coming. The morning sun rose over the skyline like a curtain lifting before a storm. Adrian Voss's penthouse was unusually quiet. Too quiet. He stood before the glass window, a cup of untouched coffee trembling slightly in his hand, as his phone exploded with messages, calls, and alerts. Breaking news. Billionaire CEO Adrian Voss found harboring street girl in his home. Gossip Weekly. Angel or predator? The mystery behind Adrian Voss and the child nobody knew. City Pulse. Charity or scandal? Inside the CEO's secret night. Every headline felt like a blade cutting into his reputation, the life he had spent decades building brick by brick. The media, hungry for blood, had found its feast. And as he scrolled through the chaos, a sickening dread grew in his gut, not for himself, but for her Lena. In the kitchen, she sat quietly at the counter, legs swinging from the stool, oblivious to the storm brewing outside. Her hair was neatly combed by the housekeeper, and she was humming softly while feeding crumbs to a stray bird perched near the window. Adrian watched her for a moment, the innocence in her eyes both beautiful and heartbreaking. She didn't understand the world of men with cameras and lies, the world that turned compassion into scandal. The intercom buzzed sharply, breaking his thoughts. "Sir," came Melissa's voice, tense and uneasy. "There are reporters at the building entrance. Dozens of them. They're shouting questions about her." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Don't let anyone in." "Not one." "Yes, sir. But this is spreading fast. Even the board is calling." He hung up, exhaling through gritted teeth. He could already imagine the whispers, the investors doubting his sanity, the shareholders questioning his judgment. In their world, image was everything. And this looked like madness. He turned back toward Lena. "Lena," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "We might have to leave here for a little while. Go somewhere quiet, okay?" She looked up, blinking. "Did I do something wrong?" The question broke him. "No, sweetheart," he said quickly. "You did everything right. The world just doesn't understand good things sometimes." Her small hand reached for his. "Then we can teach them," he smiled weakly. "Maybe we can." A few hours later, the chaos only deepened. Reporters lined the streets outside his office tower, cameras flashing like gunfire. Online social media buzzed with wild theories, some praising him as a hero, others accusing him of dark motives. Inside the boardroom, a meeting had already begun. The directors, all dressed in polished arrogance, sat around the long glass table, faces stern. When Adrian entered, the air thickened with unspoken judgment. "Adrian," began Mr. Warren, the oldest and most conservative of them all, "we need to discuss the situation. It's affecting our stocks, our image, and frankly, our investors' confidence." "I expected that," Adrian said calmly, taking a seat. "Good," Warren continued. "Then you understand why we need to make a public statement. Clarify that this child is being handled by the proper authorities. She's not a case to be handled." Adrian said, his voice sharp. She's a human being. Warren's jaw tightened. That may be true, but this isn't about sentiment. It's about survival. One viral headline can undo everything you've built. Adrian leaned forward. Then maybe it wasn't worth building. The room went silent. A few of the younger directors shifted uncomfortably. Adrian, Melissa said gently from the side. If you refuse to comment, they'll assume guilt. Maybe issue a statement, something about helping her through an NGO. He shook his head. No, I won't turn this into a publicity stunt. If I speak, it'll be the truth. And what truth is that? Warren sneered. That sometimes, Adrian said, standing slowly. Doing the right thing costs more than doing nothing. But I'll pay that price. Without another word, he walked out, leaving a room full of stunned silence behind. By evening, the mob outside had grown louder. Lena watched from the upper window, confused by the flashing lights and shouting voices. Why are they angry? She asked. Adrian sighed. They're not angry at you. They're scared of what they don't understand, she frowned. But you said when you do good things, good comes back. He smiled faintly, bitterness in his eyes. Sometimes it takes a while to come back. That night, Adrian made a choice. He would go public, not to defend himself, but to protect her. The next morning, cameras surrounded the steps of his building as he stepped out, calm and resolute. Microphones lunged toward him like spears. Mr. Voss, who is the girl? Is this your child? Are you under investigation? He raised his hand for silence. Her name is Lena, he began, his voice echoing across the chaos. She's a child who's been through more than any child should. I found her starving, alone, and being abused. I helped her because it was the right thing to do. That's it. No scandal, no secret, the crowd murmured. I built my fortune believing success was about power. But I was wrong. It's about humanity. If helping a hungry child ruins me, then maybe I deserve to be ruined. The reporters fell silent. His voice carried the weight of something rare. Truth, unpolished, raw. And somewhere behind the glass doors, Lena watched him through the reflection, her small hands pressed against the window. For the first time, she saw not the powerful man who saved her, but the man who stood alone for what was right. But just as hope flickered again, a black car rolled to a stop across the street. A tall figure stepped out, wearing a sharp suit and a darker smile. He whispered something to a journalist who nodded eagerly. Adrian noticed the man and froze. He knew that face, his estranged business rival Damian Cole, a man who had once been his closest friend. And suddenly, Adrian realized, this scandal wasn't random. It was planned. The crowd's chatter rippled like an ocean of whispers, but Adrian's eyes were locked on one man, Damian Cole. Slick hair, steel gray suit, smile polished with poison. Once upon a time, Damian had been more than just a business partner. He had been a brother. Together, they had built the empire that made them both millionaires. But greed had a way of turning loyalty into leverage. And years ago, when Adrian refused to sell out their company's ethics for faster profits, Damian had walked away. Now, here he was, standing across the street, wearing a smirk that said checkmate. Adrian's stomach tightened. He didn't believe in coincidences, not in this city. The timing, the leak, the photos, it all had Damian's fingerprints written all over it. When the cameras turned to capture the tension between them, Damian raised his hand in a mock-friendly wave. Adrian! He called out smoothly, his voice carrying over the crowd. What a noble speech. Didn't know you'd traded in your boardroom for charity work. Adrian didn't move. Still trading dignity for profit, I see, he replied, his tone calm but edged like glass. The reporters swarmed instantly, smelling blood. Microphones darted between them like vultures. Mr. Cole, do you know anything about this child? One asked. Damian smiled at the cameras. Only that my former partner has a history of impulsive decisions. Brilliant man, but when emotion gets involved, he forgets reason. He shrugged, turning toward the flashing lights. All I'm saying is, maybe someone should make sure that little girl's story adds up. Lena, watching from the upper window, flinched as her name was thrown into the storm again. Adrian's fists clenched, every instinct screaming to shut Damian up, but he forced himself to stay composed. He had learned the hard way. The rich don't win battles in the streets. They win them with truth and time. Be careful, Damian, Adrian said quietly. You're playing with someone's life, not a headline. Damian's grin widened. And you're risking everything for someone who means nothing. Let's see who the world believes. Then he turned, slipping into his black car, leaving behind a cloud of camera flashes and questions. Back inside the penthouse, Adrian found Lena curled up on the couch, hugging his coat to her chest. Her small voice quivered when she spoke. "Are they going to take me away, sir?" He froze. "Who told you that?" "The TV," she whispered. "They said I don't belong here, that I should go to a shelter." He knelt beside her, his voice steady but heavy. "You belong where you're safe, and you are safe with me." She searched his eyes for truth. "But if you lose your job, it'll be because of me." He shook his head. "Jobs can come back. People like you. There's only one." Tears filled her eyes, but this time she didn't cry. She just nodded and leaned into him. For a moment, the world's noise disappeared. Later that night, the storm hit harder. News anchors debated his motives. Social media exploded with clips and speculation. Anonymous sources claimed inside information. Someone even leaked a blurred photo of Lena sleeping on his couch. The image twisted to look sinister, and when Adrian saw the watermark in the corner of the leaked footage, Cole Media Group, his suspicion hardened into certainty. He slammed his laptop shut. Enough was enough. By midnight, he was at Damien's downtown office, a towering monument of glass and greed. The security guard barely managed to protest before Adrian stormed through the doors, his eyes burning. Damien was waiting, sipping whiskey like a man who'd already won. "Adrian," he drawled, "I was wondering when you'd drop by. How's your little publicity stunt going?" "Cut the act," Adrian snapped. "You leaked the story. You used her, an innocent child, to destroy me." Damien set his glass down carefully. "Don't be so dramatic. I didn't destroy you. You did that yourself the moment you thought a broken kid would fix whatever guilt you're carrying." Adrian's jaw tightened. "This isn't about guilt. It's about doing what's right." "No," Damien said, leaning back with a smirk. "It's about control, and you've lost it." For a moment, silence stretched like a wire between them. Then Adrian stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "You think ruining me makes you powerful? You've forgotten what power actually is, Damien. It's not money. It's mercy. Something you'll never understand." Damien chuckled darkly. "Mercy doesn't pay dividends." Adrian turned toward the door. "Neither does your soul." He left without looking back, but Damien's final words followed him out like venom. "Watch your step, old friend. The higher you climb, the harder you fall." Back home, the penthouse lights glowed softly in the dark. Adrian stood by the window again, staring out at the sleepless city, thinking of every choice that brought him here, every deal, every compromise, every wall he built around his heart. Then, from behind him, a small voice whispered, "You're shaking." He turned to see Lena barefoot holding a blanket. She wrapped it around his arm, smiling faintly. "You don't have to be strong all the time." He swallowed hard, crouching down so their eyes met. "I'm not strong," he admitted. "I just can't give up now." "Then don't," she said. "Mama used to say the darkest nights mean the morning's almost here." Her words landed in his chest like sunlight through clouds, and for the first time in years, Adrian smiled. A small, honest smile. "Your mother was a wise woman." Lena nodded, resting her head on his arm. "She'd like you." As she drifted to sleep beside him, Adrian looked back out the window at the city lights, his empire, his burden, his battlefield. He knew tomorrow would bring more chaos, more accusations, more judgment. But he also knew one truth. He wouldn't abandon her. Not for anything, because somewhere between wealth and ruin, he had found something rarer than gold, purpose. But as dawn crept over the horizon, his phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. "You think it's over?" "You don't know the truth about her." Adrian froze. His heart began to race. "The truth? About Lena?" The text glowed on Adrian's phone screen like a riddle carved in fire. "You think it's over? You don't know the truth about her." For a long moment he simply stared, his heart pounding. Every instinct screamed that it was another one of Damien's games, another attempt to twist the knife deeper. But something about those words felt different. The phrasing, the urgency. It wasn't his rival's voice. It was desperate. Adrian's thumbs hovered over the screen. "Who is this? What do you mean?" 3 dots blinked for a moment, then vanished. No reply. He tried calling back, but the number was untraceable, private, encrypted. Frustration boiled through him. He turned toward Lena, still sleeping peacefully on the couch, a faint smile on her lips. The city lights painted her small frame in silver and gold. He whispered under his breath, "What truth?" The next morning his world would begin to unravel. At sunrise his assistant Emily arrived, her eyes wide with shock. "Adrian, you need to see this," she said, shoving a tablet into his hand. The news was everywhere again. But this time it wasn't about Adrian. It was about Lena. An investigative article had gone viral overnight. The headline read, "Missing child of philanthropist doctor found alive after 2 years, adopted by millionaire CEO." Adrian's vision blurred. He scrolled, heart racing. The article showed photos of Lena, her mother, and a man in a hospital coat. Dr. Elias Marrow, a humanitarian surgeon who'd gone missing in a plane crash 2 years earlier. The same night Lena's mother had died. Emily spoke carefully. "Sir, it says her father was presumed dead, but there were survivors. One of them turned up last month in a remote village hospital. He's alive." Adrian's grip tightened on the tablet. "Alive?" "Yes," she whispered. "And he's looking for his daughter." By afternoon, the truth exploded across every network. Reporters flooded the front of Adrian's building. Social media erupted with hashtags like "Your Miracle Child" and "Millionaire Guardian." Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Would he give Lena back? Inside the penthouse, the little girl sat quietly, clutching her sketchbook. "Are they mad at me again?" she asked. Adrian knelt before her. "No, sweetheart. They're happy. They found someone who's been looking for you. Someone who loves you very much." Her eyes widened. "My daddy?" He nodded slowly. "Yes." For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then her lip quivered. "So, I have to go?" The words hit him harder than he expected. He wanted to say no, to tell her that she could stay, that this was her home now. But deep down, he knew the truth. "You deserve to be with your family, Lena. That's what your mother would want." Tears welled up in her eyes. "But you're my family too." He felt his throat tighten. "You'll always be part of mine." That night, Adrian sat alone in his study, staring at a photo Lena had drawn of them. 2 stick figures holding hands beneath a sun with smiling rays. His phone rang, and when he answered, a soft, trembling voice greeted him. "Mr. Cole?" It wasn't Damien. It was a man's voice, weary and broken. "This is Dr. Elias Marrow. They told me you found my daughter." Adrian's heart steadied. "Yes, she's safe." "I don't know how to thank you," Elias said, his voice cracking. "For 2 years I searched. Hospitals, orphanages, every corner of the country. I thought she was gone. I don't know how to face her after all this time." "You don't need to," Adrian said gently. "Just hold her. That's enough." There was a long pause on the line. "She must think of you as her father now." Adrian swallowed. "She thinks of me as someone who didn't give up on her." Elias's voice softened. "Then that makes you a father too." The reunion happened the next morning. The world watched, cameras ready as a frail but smiling doctor stepped out of a car, his hands trembling. Lena stood beside Adrian, clutching his hand tightly. When she saw the man, her eyes filled instantly. "Daddy?" He fell to his knees, tears spilling down his cheeks. "Lena." "My little star." She ran into his arms, sobbing, her tiny fingers digging into his coat as if afraid he'd disappear again. The cameras flashed, the crowd gasped, but in that moment, the noise faded. It was just father and daughter, 2 lost souls reunited by fate. Adrian stood a few feet away, watching with a bittersweet ache in his chest. He should have felt relief, and he did, but underneath it was a hollow space, one he hadn't known existed until she filled it. When Elias finally approached him, he extended a hand. "I owe you my world," he said quietly. Adrian shook his hand firmly. "You owe me nothing. Just promise me one thing, anything. Keep her smiling." Elias nodded, tears glistening. "I will." Weeks passed. The frenzy faded, and the city forgot, as it always does. But Adrian didn't. One evening, as he sat on the same park bench where it all began, he noticed a little envelope tucked beside him. No name, just a crayon heart on the front. Inside was a drawing, Adrian and Lena again, this time with another man beside them, all holding hands under the same smiling sun. Below it, in shaky handwriting, she'd written, "Families don't end. They grow." For the first time in years, Adrian's eyes filled. He looked up at the sky, the city lights flickering like stars. and whispered, "Thank you." Months later, Adrian launched a new foundation, the Leftover Miracle. Its mission, to feed and shelter abandoned children across the country. The story of the millionaire and the hungry girl became a beacon of hope, a reminder that compassion can turn strangers into family. When asked in an interview why he started it all, Adrian smiled faintly and said, "Because one day, a little girl asked for my leftovers, and I realized I'd been starving too, not for food, but for purpose." And as the city skyline shimmered in gold, a small voice echoed in his memory, gentle, innocent, unbreakable. "The darkest nights mean the morning's almost here," and indeed the morning had come. Moral: even a small act of kindness can rewrite destiny. Sometimes the miracle you give away becomes the one that saves you.